Good evening. My name is Mark King. I'm from Germantown, Maryland. I'm not interested in zoning. I'm not interested in how high the tower is. As a military guy, combat arms officer in the United States Army, I recognize when I can't generate enough combat power to overcome the enemy. So here's what I'd like to see. These towers, and I happen to be the proud recipient of one right on my front lawn, is that I have concluded that there is a reason to be concerned about the value of my property once this tower is installed, and I suspect it will be installed. So what I would like to see, I'd like to find out if the county has the ability to cause a fund to be created by the cell tower companies that requires the establishment of a fund for, let's say, 1 cent for every dollar collected for the operation of the towers. This fund would be used to compensate homeowners, and conversely, it could compensate health issues and other issues that arise from this throughout the county who lose value in the property because of the close proximity of a small cell tower. The details of such fund operations could be worked out later. There's no question in my mind that after discussing the issue with a number of realtors in the area, that this will affect home property values mostly to the negative. And there's plenty of anecdotal evidence on the internet that would support that claim as well. As such, I believe that the county has the responsibility to establish the permitting criteria for the installation of these small towers. Then the county bears the responsibility to protect homeowners throughout the county, ensuring that their property values will not be negatively impacted by these actions. So I ask, can the county require the cell phone companies to establish a real estate compensation fund to ensure homeowners throughout the county are financially protected from a reduction in value of their property as a result of this action? Thank you.
That is something that we would have to further research. And
Thank you for holding this hearing. I'm an Army veteran, a doctor, and an ex-engineer. My question is, why, if there is problem with service, and I understand I used to work at the Pentagon, people like to telework, why not use voice over IP? Because for most providers, once you get near your router, your cell phone should be able to switch over to voice over IP. And then that's one thought. And my second question is really repeating what all my basically neighbors here essentially are asking. We appreciate the fact that this is a difficult task to deal with. I do realize that the FCC's chairman is an ex-Verizon legal counsel. So, however, what we are asking is, we feel passionate about this. How would you or the chairman of FCC feel if somebody were to hold a cell phone to their, basically next to their children's head 24/7? We feel that kind of passion. I feel that about my children, about my neighbor's children, about all these people here. So how can we fight them? Thanks.
okay,
In the Wesley neighborhood. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your patience and your continued struggle in our behalf. I recognize I've not always been that understanding in my questioning in the past, and I apologize for any impatience I've shown. I do want to ask two questions, because we've seen a lot of slides in the past few meetings. Are we going to see a slide that will show us the current cell phone coverage as it exists in our area? That's number one. And then projected maps for the future. And then number two, we have a neighborhood that's not far from us that has one large, like 93-foot tower or something like that. And since the Wesley neighborhood is targeted for, I don't know, dozen or two towers, why can't we have one large tower in our neighborhood in one of the green spaces, of which we have plenty? And that should alleviate at least some of the concerns of proximity, and the inverse square law will allow us to feel more comfortable by distance from the radiation, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the slide things. If we can pull up slide 17. Okay, so on the first issue of can we get a map that's showing the coverage, we can try to work on something like that. The issue with that is what it is not showing is capacity. So in the past, when you had cell phones, the service was on, or you would notice that you'd have a dropped call. Now, when you look at capacity, what tends to happen is you have things where they slow down. So you may have a web page that comes on your phone, but then it takes a while for all the pictures to load. Or you have a video and it takes a while to go ahead and buffer. So that is a little bit harder because the capacity is also driven by if you have certain roads where you have a lot of people who are there at rush hour, so they have a lot of devices and they may be using GPS, streaming music, the kids are watching something. So those can all, that's a little bit trickier. This slide here is showing you roughly, and if we go back one slide, okay, so a 100-foot tower roughly has a radius of about a mile. A 20-foot tower roughly has a radius of about 750 feet. Those two things are capable of providing the same amount of capacity. So you could say is that instead of building, we can go to the next slide, instead of building 57 new small antennas, I could go ahead and build 57 tall antennas and potentially get there. The issue is two things, really. One is that the targeted approach that you might have is I don't need coverage everywhere. Where I need it can be in certain pockets. Those pockets can also exist because of topography. We have hills and we have valleys and we have very tall trees, and all of those things on a case-by-case basis can make a difference. Some people would like them in open spaces. Some people would like to make sure that we don't have them in open spaces. On the the issue is that there are, the last issue is that 5G is two things. It's a tool. You can take the way that 5G is roughly working is I'm putting a device closer to the antenna. And that allows me to take spectrum and to take information, and it's going like this. And the faster that I can hand off and deliver that, I can reuse that spectrum. And that's what a provider is using to get more capacity. As you have more people who are streaming Netflix, watching those things, cutting off and not using Wi-Fi to connect those, but connecting to some other plan, that can impact it. There are other, so you can take what we call 4G technology and you can use 5G tools and turn it into 5G. In addition, there's new spectrum, and I think people mentioned it, that's coming out. That's because of, if you've seen the auctions, those of you, when you had a digital television, we've had to move it. If some of you have noticed, some PBS stations have been selling it. All this is part of the federal government kind of moving things around to make more spectrum available. One of the things that they're looking to do is to make spectrum available that doesn't travel as far. So you could have a provider that says, I don't have the ability to use a 100-foot tower because I don't own the spectrum that travels a mile. I only own or have more capacity in the spectrum that travels something like 750 feet. Okay, I'm going to move to the veteran in front. Yes, sir.